No, there's some left, don't worry. Oh, people are already trying to get in the Zoom. That's exciting. Let me see now. Now the screen. So you will have some people on Zoom as well.
Okay,
Which means that, well, you just have to speak up a little bit. You have a microphone.
okay,
Okay, you have to talk to the mic.
okay.
So the people on Zoom can hear you as well, and the people in the room. And if there's any questions or comments, they should be talking to the mic as well, and we're gonna ask someone to volunteer and pass the mic,
Okay,
okay? The other mic. So, let me see here. We are talking about starting the stream. So there's So in the case that you're not using the PowerPoint, it makes it much easier because you don't have to do share screen and all that. You can just start admitting those people. I'll just mute this.
Oh, they don't.
Now they do.
Oh, they okay.
It was muted.
Okay, I am sorry. I think for Zoom participants, there was a problem with the sound system, but I hope everything is fine now. I will provide you 4 perspectives in Islamic thought. These will be one of them theological perspective, because we will explore different 4 perspectives, and then we will have a conversation. You can ask me further questions. Another perspective is legal perspective. The third one is Sufi perspective. And the fourth one is political perspective on sin and forgiveness. First, I should mention that everyone is born in Islam, and all of them, they accept these 4 perspectives. Everyone is born without sin, on a clean slate. People, after being born with a clean slate, they commit sins, major or minor sins. That is how it happens. This is one thing we have to keep in mind. Now, the first perspective, theological perspective, you may know, you may not know, in Islamic history, one of the most important problems started as a political/theological issue. After Prophet Muhammad's death, the community divided into 2 who was going to succeed Prophet Muhammad. And there was a civil war. And in Islamic history, this has been noted as one of the most unfortunate and traumatic events in Islamic history, because basically in that civil war, Prophet's wife and Prophet's daughter, they opposed each other in terms of who was going to lead the community. The Prophet's wife sided with the Abu Bakr, the first caliph, and the Prophet's daughter sided with her husband, basically. But that is Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law, Ali. So when there was a civil war, the first question they asked, can someone be considered still a Muslim, a believer, if they kill their sister and brother? That was the first question from a theological perspective. Basically, that question developed into a formula saying that if you commit a major sin, can you still be considered a believer? Which means that if you did, some said that you are out of the belief system, you have to basically renew your faith. So that theological question was the product or the result of this political experience after Prophet Muhammad's death. And we can get into more detail in our question and answer period. This was the first time Muslims, they asked the question, major sinner, could they still be considered a Muslim? And we will see that in Islamic history, what those major sins were. It wasn't only just, killing each other, but they will extend that major sins into different categories as well. I will talk about. Another perspective is legal perspective. From a legal perspective, what Muslim jurists they did, God sent us the Quran, the scripture. In this scripture, God tells us what to do and what not to do. So, based on those regulations, legal theorists, they see sin as a legal issue rather than theological issue, which means that For them, they are interested in more public issues rather than private issues. In 10th, 11th century, there was a big discussion. For example, someone claims publicly they are Muslim, but secretly they go to either church or synagogue. From a theological perspective, for example, people who went to secretly different, religious temples. From a theological perspective, they are not considered to be a true believer, because although they say publicly something, but in private sphere they do something else. But from a legal perspective, lawyers, they said that whatever they say publicly, we consider them who they are. So whatever they do in private, we don't deal with their private business. We are legal people, and this is our perspective. So for a legal person, what is sin is what is happening in the public sphere. Now, Sufi perspective. From Sufi perspective, they refer to, of course, how do you understand what is sin? Like, what are the sources of how can we determine this is a sin or not a sin? Most of all these different perspectives, they use either Quran as a source. Second, they use Prophet Muhammad's sayings and his behavior. That is called Sunnah/Hadith. These words are used interchangeably. So there are two sources. One is the Quran, another one is Prophet Muhammad's sayings. Now, Sufi is referring to one of Prophet Muhammad's sayings because they asked Prophet Muhammad, what is a sin? And Prophet Muhammad says that the sin is, I am going to quote, I don't want to make mistakes. Sin is that which creates doubt, and you do not like people to know it. This is one thing. Another time they ask him again, Prophet Muhammad, what is a sin? He says that ask your heart regarding it. Piety is what comforts the heart, and sin is what disturbs the heart. Even if people pronounce it lawful, like legal people, even people pronounce it lawful and give you verdicts on such matters again and again. So based on this definition, Sufi's understanding of sin is not what theological perspective or legal perspective would say about the sin. So the sin is more individual, more based on the case and situation. And there is no legal pronouncement or theological perspective on this Sufi perspective. And as we know, the first major sinner in Islam was Satan, evil. When God created human beings, Satan was actually an angel. Since he or she, we don't really know the gender of the Satan, evil. It is called Iblis, one of the name of this angel, Satan. Satan says that I cannot bow down in front of someone that you created. Because as angels, up until now, all we did was bow down in front of you, basically God. So I cannot bow down in front of anyone other than you, Satan says, although God asked him to do it. For example, Sufis, they see that Satan is the most loyal lover from a Sufi perspective. Because he was loyal to God until the end, even from their perspective, that was the highest sign of someone is loyal to their lover. Basically, not bowing down anyone other than God. If you look at from a theological and legal perspective, this wouldn't be correct. They would see it as sin. So Sufi perspective is a different perspective, and there are certainly more aspects to it we can talk about in question and answer. Another perspective is a political perspective. Political perspective developed again among when Islam expanded to different places outside of Arabian Peninsula, to North Africa, Central Asia, Spain, even towards China, like including today's Afghanistan and India. So according to them, sin is a ruler that is basically messing up two things. One is economy, another one is agriculture. Which means that today, like after a certain age, I am sure that all you are dealing with, like what you are going to put into your body. Is it healthy? Does it have lots of pesticide? Does it have, like all those issues that makes food unsafe? So from their perspective, there was two public sin. One of them is messing up the economy, which means that there's an inequality between people in terms of what they do, like as labor and what they earn. This is one major sin. Another one is whoever messing up the agriculture, the soil that produces food, and it is important for us to survive. Without good food, I mean, you can certainly survive, but your quality of life would be different. Another issues, in addition to these four perspectives, I would like to talk about two different categories as well. One of them is major sin and minor sin categories in Islam. The other one is private sin and public sin. So major sin is in Islam is the most important one is in Arabic called shirk, which means that associating others with God, basically seeing any person, any institution, any entity like a kind of equal to God in terms of the authority, or associating partners with God. So this is the sin that God doesn't forgive until you basically repent. Other major sin, like in these categories, is murder, killing someone. Another one is consuming the money or the property or the wealth of the orphan person. Another one is, of course, using interest as one of the major sins. Witchcraft, another major sin. Believing in astrology in those times, I would say. Another one is slandering chaste woman. Basically, like ruining the reputation of a woman, another major sin. minor sin, like anything that is considered like disturbing other people, like anger, those are also, I mean, there are so many you can certainly see in these categories, but what is important is really the major sins and how minor sins, if you are not really careful, I mean, I can use a basic analogy, those small sins can also turn into a major sin, which means that if you have a small cyst in your body, a benign cyst, if you are not careful and you have to check, sometimes they say every 2 or 3 years, it can turn into malignant cyst, which means that it can turn into a tumor. Which means that if you are not careful about these minor sins, it can turn into major sins. Private and public sin, and also, for example, adultery is a sin, but if it is privately done, it is something, if it is publicly done, it is something else. So any sin that is done publicly, it can turn into a major sin. So they make also this distinction between theologians, a minor and major sins. And there is also another category that they don't put into these categories. That category is more, I would say, invisible sins. What I mean by invisible sins is the sins of the heart. One of them is envy. Another one is hatred. Another one is anger. So these are more, you know, like emotional jealousy. Another one. That not, you cannot really see them. It is in someone's body, really. It is interesting, you know, like some other Islamic scholar, like one of them is Ghazali, he puts as major sins throughout the Islamic history. There are so many scholars that has defined the major sins in their own way. One of them is very well known and very prominent Islamic scholar Al-Ghazali from the 12th century. He puts into major sins, for example, excessive eating is one of the major sins. Yeah, it says either you have to eat like what your body needs, and you cannot eat just for the sake of taste. You will have to eat only what your body needs, really. You shouldn't really, the main idea is not really tasting the food, or this tastes really good. So this is, he puts under this excessive eating category. What is excessive eating? Excess in lust, another major sin. Harmful speech, he puts that in that category, major sin. Backbiting, he says this is even worse than adultery. Strong anger, another one. Love of wealth, another major sin. Pride, saying that, you know, like, I have done this job, this is my, you know, like, work, I put so much effort into this and I did it, I succeeded it. Or, you know, like, I am beautiful, I am wonderful, or I belong to this family, I belong to this nation. So that kind of pride, you know, I am this or that. And envy, like, basically you are not satisfying with what you have. You are always thinking about, like, am I missing something? There is something that I haven't done in my life, I haven't explored, I haven't, you are always thinking about something that you don't have by looking at other people. Another aspect in the public and private sin. If you made a public sin, only whatever like harm you caused to another person or people, you have to do your apology publicly. God even cannot forgive that sin because it is not within the domain of God. When they make this distinction between private and public, private sins, God can forgive those sins. In terms of forgiveness, of course, other than the major sin, that one sin that God doesn't forgive unless you renew your faith, which is associating others with God, associating partners with God. Other than that big sin, God can forgive any other sins that you may have. In order to do that, I mean, there are several prayers that you do to be forgiven. The idea is after you make a commitment, you ask forgiveness from God. You are committed to not to do it again. God can forgive you many times, like zillions of times. We don't have any access to that domain unless that sin is committed to you. Like, for example, your property is taken unjustly, or someone is talking bad about you, ruining your reputation. So those are, it is not in the domain of God. So you go and ask forgiveness from those people. Even it says in the hereafter, if you didn't do that, in the hereafter, God will not judge you. God will ask still in front of all people in the day of judgment to ask forgiveness from those people. So you will have to talk to them. You will have to clear your case with them, not with God. Yeah, with these initial remarks, I would like, I mean, these are, I have given you some ideas and insights to think about them. And I would like to have a conversation with you now, and I'm happy to have your questions.
Start right here.
Then you have to take the mic.
Yeah, I know. Just not want to step into my.
You don't have to stand up, you just. Sit. You can sit.
No, I don't, I was going to pass the mic around.
Oh, she's passing the
Oh,
mic.
all right. I was closer, I would start. Ready?
Oh, I thought you were
No, I
You're gonna do it next time.
I just thought, since I was closer.
That's okay.
Go for it.
Yes.
I have a question regarding Islam and their attitude towards different religion. As I understand, Quran has maybe I'm wrong, two different interpretations. One is peaceful, they can live in peace with a different religion. Another one is more aggressive. If you, different religion, if you are not willing to convert to Islam, you should be, I don't know, destroyed, eliminated. So if this is the right approach, you know, I'm wrong.
Yes, I think most of us, of course, especially the fixing of the text, the Quran, even the name of the religion as Islam, we have a public image that it is hard to answer this question without really understanding what Quran is. Because your references are coming from Quran, and some of the, of course, these references are coming from the Hadith tradition as well, Prophet Muhammad sayings. When Quran was revealed, it was revealed in 23 years. And none of the Islamic scholars until the modern period, which means that basically 19th and 20th century, they did not call the book as the Quran. For example, I am teaching a course at the university, Introduction to the Quran. Since it has become a common knowledge that that book is called Quran, and everyone is saying now it is Quran. The Rochester was originally the name of the Rochester was Rochesterville, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
I don't know what was the name of Rochesterville in 16th century, for example. Like, was it still Rochesterville or something else? We don't really know.
It didn't exist.
Okay. So all of the Islamic scholars, they said the copy, Mus'haf in Arabic, the copy of what? The copy of the revelation. Which means that the way the Quran, I am using the word because everyone is using the word, that is why, but when we come to let's say 7th century, 8th century, 9th century, 10, 11, they don't, the word doesn't exist in their vocabulary as the definition of the book that we now call Quran. They call it Mus'haf. Which means that the Quran as revelation and experience is different than written text. Did God send? How does the process of revelation took place from God to Prophet Muhammad to people and becoming those put into book that we know now today between two covers? That is why in early Islam, scholars, they wrote the occasions of revelations, which means that the historical and political context of the revelation, which means that any verse, like either about peace or about those verses that might be interpreted as non-peaceful, they all have specific historical circumstances and context. This is one thing. Another one, for example, in the Medinan constitution, when Prophet Muhammad migrated from Mecca to Medina, people, they asked him, of course, as a kind of peacemaker, negotiating figure between two tribes that were fighting all the time. Because of his skills in business in Mecca, his wife was a businesswoman. Basically, she had 400 caravans, which means that today, if you have 400 trucks, you imagine you're a company and you are managing 400 trucks. Hatice, his wife, Muhammad's wife, was managing that company, and Muhammad was in charge of the managing job. Hatice was the owner, so his wife, and Muhammad was the manager. So Medinan people, they know that he has a skill in terms of negotiation and having a fair agreement. He establishes a constitution when they migrate to Medina, Prophet Muhammad and his early followers. In that document, what was the third president of the United States?
Jefferson.
Jefferson, yes. Jefferson has a copy of the Quran, as well as he asked someone to translate the Medinan constitution from Latin to English to have the insight from this documentation how to live with other people, how to live with different faiths, different ethnicities at the beginning of and as we can see, from that time, Jefferson time to here is even United States history is a different tradition. At the very origin of United States, someone is asking Constitution of Medina to be inspired and to use or to understand how Muhammad solved this problem, living with differences. And in that document, on the Medina Constitution, it says, it puts Jews in the category of believers. And the document makes a distinction between Muslims and mu'min in Arabic now. Muslim means someone who submitted themselves to an authority, which means that their heart or they haven't really experienced faith. Even in one verse in the Quran says one Arab tribe comes, like we have accepted Islam, and the verse says, which they also claim that afterwards, of course, they are a believer. In the Quran says, say that you have submitted yourself to Islam, but you are not, your heart hasn't converted, which means that you haven't become a believer. So in Medinan Constitution, believer is used as a category, as word maybe 50 times, and Muslim is used maybe 2 or 3 times. And in the Quran, it is the same. Maybe mu'min is used more than 1,000 times. Muslim is used maybe 50 or 200. I am giving you very approximate. I haven't counted them, but based on the studies that we have, 80% is used really the word mu'min, believer, and 20% uses Muslim as a word in the Quran, the number of occurrences. So in that documentation, certain Jewish groups in Medina, and there were 2 groups, they are considered in that category of believers. So when we consider the historical context and circumstances of the verses, we can understand why there is that verse. What was the specific circumstance? It becomes much more clear, and also those issues are more complex than simple, one is just peaceful, another one is non-peaceful. That would be my approach, how to understand those verses in the Quran. And yeah, in order to answer to this question, we might have one maybe semester or mini series on the Quran. What is Quran? Because for us, Rochester, when I came to Rochester, first I went to downtown Rochester on Sunday, and there was no one on the street. And I felt I felt very all of a sudden, I am all alone here. Because where I came from, Montreal, when you go to downtown, it is like Europe, everyone is on the street, and on Sunday afternoon, there is no one. I didn't feel safe. Now it is downtown, they call it financial district. I don't know what was happening in that specific area in the 18th century. Maybe there was foxes, coyotes, playing around together, and there was no financial district. So that is why, in order to understand the history of Quran, how the Quran is interpreted, understood in many different ways. So Quran is something. Another one is, of course, most of the Islamic scholars in the 18th century and 19th century, they asked a very fundamental question: who wrote the Quran? By asking that question, they asked a simple question, saying that, of course, everyone knows that God is the author of the book. But they wanted to understand what is the relationship between the book and the reader. Which means that who is determining the meaning? God can, send the revelation to a prophet, and he can tell us the message. These are the words. But who is giving the meaning to these words, the readers. They were saying that who wrote the Quran is not a very simple answer. Who is reading and interpreting is actually writing the book, rewriting the book. So those are also important interpretation of those verses. It's a long answer.
Good one.
Yeah.
Hold on.
How do you
No,
repent?
we have to use the mic.
How do Islam, how do the people repent? I know that if we sin, we personally have to ask the person to forgive us 3 times.
Yes.
And we have community that we all repent. What do you do in Islam?
Yeah, if it is a sin that is not like that doesn't involve other people, you ask forgiveness from God by praying. Those are in addition to, of course, your ritual daily prayers. These are extra prayers that you have to do that. But these are all individual. For example, when I was 11 years old, which means that I was in grade 4th, if I'm not mistaken. We were living in a small town in Turkey. There was a man who was a tailor, basically like doing all my like father's pantaloon, like any suits that as a tailor he would do that. And the reason we got to know that tailor, because he was giving candies to all children. One day, his place, his store was close to a big mosque. I went to mosque, and the mosque had 2 floors. And usually people, they prayed on the first floor with imam. And he would always go upstairs. He would pray upstairs, but joining them, of course, in the communal prayer. One day I went upstairs to see what he's doing, like alone there. And normally, I can show you, I mean, I want to show you with my body language. Sorry. Maybe, I hope the Zoom people, they may be able
They
to
can see
it.
it, they can see it because that's the camera.
Okay, yeah. Usually when you pray, like, of course, like there is, you know, like you are standing, you are bowing down, progressing, and then you sit at the end, mostly you sit like this. Of course, like either in communal or personal prayer in the mosque. I saw him like this. He was doing like this. Usually, like normal people, they would sit like this, and he was sitting like this. And of course, I was 11 years old, like a child, basically at that age, not teenage, I would say early teenage. His name was Abid. He was over at that time, as far as I remember, over 60, 65 maybe. You know, like as teenage, you are curious about everything. You ask people and they don't really judge you. And I asked him, why do you sit like that? Because I see everyone is sitting normal and you do it all the time like this. And he did not have any like physical issues. And it is always like, I find it very touching. He started crying. And he didn't, I felt very like touched, at the same time uncomfortable a bit, because someone is older than you is crying and you don't know what is going on, and he didn't tell me right away. He said that 20 years ago, there was a dog, and that, like, like there are different shopping centers, there are like butcher, hairdresser, in old towns. That dog was coming to butcher every day, and he was going to the other stores as well. And one day he got angry. The dog is, like disturbing all the time. And he hit the dog. And they found the dog in 3 days dead on the street. And yeah, it is very hard for me to, because for him it was also very, I was of course happy that he shared, because it was a big lesson for me. He felt that, of course, no one knew that he hit the dog. And he thought, the vet said that there was an internal bleeding, and he believed that he was the killer of that dog. And for 20 years, he said that he's praying like that in order to be forgiven in front of God. And he said that never eat any animal. He said, it's small, big, any creature. That was like, because you ask how to ask for forgiveness. It is a kind of forgiveness between now. The dog is dead. You cannot ask forgiveness. Maybe you can ask forgiveness if he was alive. If the dog was alive, right? You would go and pet the dog and saying that I am very sorry, I apologize, something like that. So this was one of the way of asking forgiveness, for forgiveness. So basically, he was saying that, like I haven't been able, I wasn't be even like the dog, he was praying for him, for the dog, for him as well at the same time, basically.
There's a question over there.
This isn't really related to sin of forgiveness, but something you said about Muhammad's wife,
Yes.
I found interesting, that she was a prosperous businesswoman.
Yes.
And I'm trying to relate that to how in many areas of the world in Muslim communities, how women are treated. It's just, especially since his wife was, a businesswoman, and so many Muslim women in communities aren't given opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not related, but it was just, I just would like you to touch on it.
Yeah, culture and religion is always problematic in any religious tradition, I think, like even in Jewish tradition, from my experience. Yeah, I would first tell you this question, and then I can refer back to the Jewish tradition as well, based on my experience. For example, in North Africa, the woman's circumcision is not in all North Africa, especially in Egypt, I would say, referring to Muslim country, women's circumcision is an issue, and they haven't resolved that issue yet. Although most of the Muslim scholars, they issue every year, like different legal edicts saying that this is un-Islamic, illegal, still the cultural part is very strong. I give you one as an example in order to basically distinguish between the culture and religion. Another one is one of my friends told me, which was a very funny story. He said that when I went to Mecca to do my pilgrimage, because every Muslim, as part of 5 pillars of Islam, they have to go to Kaaba, which is located in today's Mecca, Saudi Arabia, and to do pilgrimage once in a lifetime. And he went there with his family, and he said that everyone is able to circle around Kaaba together, women and men. And then we finished our pilgrimage in Kaaba, and then outside, on the outskirts of Kaaba, we went to eat, and they went to, there was McDonald's in Mecca. And as soon as we entered into McDonald's, there was a section, women and men are separated immediately. And he said, oh my God, like at the house of God, everyone is circling around together. There is no separation between women and men. And as soon as you are outside of that area, it is, he said that I've seen the sharp, distinction between religion and culture. So most of those treatments are cultural, and religious ones are also, what is religious, those are also up to open to interpretation. Oh, Jewish question, sorry. For example, because I am working on a documentary on Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen is a Jewish Canadian singer and songwriter. His mother came from Russia/Lithuania, and she belonged to Yiddish tradition. And she had a hard time within the Jewish community because at that time in Montreal, Yiddish was not considered to be like, they were considered to be as a first immigrant Jewish woman as well as someone who speaks Yiddish, a bit lower status, lower category, as opposed to Hebrew. And his mother struggled a lot in Montreal in terms of finding a space within the Jewish community as a woman, specifically coming from that area in Montreal. There is also a communal aspect as well. Yeah, within some Muslim tradition would be much more egalitarian than others. From the very get-go, I was always raised like that because I have 7 sisters. And including my mother, plus 8, I was the only son. So I was all around women, so I was raised with a very egalitarian, I would say, culture.
My question is this. My question is this. You were talking about each year, maybe they go over and they
Yeah,
look at
I've been listening to it.
this
Yeah.
inflation.
I'm taking this back because it's not gonna work. I didn't want to go.
Somebody's not,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay. Anyway, several years ago, I was with a group of women, many women were Muslim and Jewish, and we were discussing same-sex partner homosexuality, and the women, the Muslim women wouldn't even discuss that at all. Now, years later, I'm wondering how in Islamic, is there any movement to accept homosexuality or same-sex partners or marriage? I think I know the answer to all 3.
You know the answer?
I know.
Maybe you can tell us.
I'm wondering if you could talk about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, one issue is in Islamic tradition was homosexuality or like LGBTQ, like all outside of the traditional, that is how they see it, traditional relationships, there wasn't any big problem within Islamic society in terms of having them and living within the Muslim domain. The only issue I think came up in the modern time, the idea of making these as identity, because when Prophet Muhammad established the first, from the very beginning, Islam had both like legal, state, and also religious, three different aspects embedded, which means that Prophet Muhammad did not only establish a religion, but also establish a state. In that document, Medina Constitution document, it says from now on, all of the clans are considered to be part of an ummah. Ummah means nation, which means that you are going to get rid of all of your older identities, and now you are in this either melting pot or salad bowl. You have a new identity. In modern time, the problem is, I think, started, or the problem that most Muslims and Muslim scholars they have, they don't have any issue with any sexual preferences, but if that identity is beyond their Muslim identity, then they would certainly oppose, saying that your first identity is Muslim identity. That is one thing. Another one is, throughout the history, we see that, for example, I am teaching a course on the Ottoman history, Jews, Christians, and Muslims in Ottoman Empire. There is a case study from 16th century, 17th century, Salonika, a Jewish and Muslim gay. And I mean, it is very detailed article I can share with you. How they, like live together under Ottoman Empire and Muslim Empire, a Jewish and Muslim gay having a relationship together, as long as it is not public. That was the main issue. They lived freely under any Muslim countries. The issue becomes problematic, or it has become problem, when they openly said, this is our identity, we want to be accepted. That was the legal issue. Social history is different than legal history, because even like in the article, people are saying that Jewish man was like top, Muslim man was bottom, like going into all these details in terms of sexual positions as well. So for social history, there is not much problem between people, how they live. But when it comes to legal, that is another question.
I was just gonna ask a question.
Even today, I am sorry. Yeah, I am very sorry. Even in today, like current circumstance in many different countries, politicians, they have different positions, and people, they live differently, right? Like politicians, they say, this is my vision, this is how I see it, this is what I want to impose. In Ottoman Empire, one of the rulers, for example, he wanted to ban smoking. And he couldn't do that. And in recent time, they asked the president of Turkey, current president of Turkey, Tayyip Erdogan, to ban the smoking in public places everywhere. He said even the Ottoman Sultan, like the ruler, couldn't, they were not able to be successful. How can I do that? It's impossible. Which means that political concern and politicians' visions are always different than public. Sorry.
That's okay. My question's about language. I noticed that you are very careful in the words that you choose to use. And in Judaism, one of the things that comes up all the time is interpretation of Hebrew words. So the Torah is written in Hebrew, and now we have somebody's English version of what's written in Hebrew, and maybe the word isn't exactly what was meant by the Hebrew word. Do these kinds of issues come up with the Quran in
Okay.
terms of translation?
This is a wonderful question. For my PhD dissertation, I analyzed the works on dialectic and argumentation theory in Islamic thought from 15th to 18th centuries. Dialectic and argumentation means in either legal theory or any text, basically they refer to the Quran. How can you prove something based on the text? How can you say that, for example, gays and lesbians, LGBT community, they cannot have a legal marriage, for example? How do you base your judgment on? You cannot just say, this is what I understand. You have to convince us that that is the case. That is what God intended to do. So I analyzed those sources. When I went to the archives, there was 70% books on linguistic philosophy. 70%. And 30% is on Quranic interpretation, which means that they understood very quickly that in order to understand this text, which is based on words, how are we going to understand? This is Arabic language. And they wrote books on how to understand the textbooks. I mean, if you read it, most of them are, of course, there was no printer at that time. They are written by hands. It is amazing, fascinating, and when you consider today's current Muslim community, in terms of their either education or sophistication level, I would say those people are like, when you read those books, 10 out of 10. Today's Muslims are maybe 1 or 2, maximum, I am being generous, 2 out of 10. There is no that sophistication at all. That is why it is very simple to, read something. We have only translation of the Quran. We don't have any real books on how to understand the Quran. Different, ways of seeing Quran. And those people, they produce those works. Yes.
Each religion. It's on.
It's on.
Now it's on. Each religion has its own traditions and laws. I mean, for instance, in Judaism, if I were to go to Brooklyn and I was Orthodox, I would be required not only to follow civil law, but to follow the laws and stand in front of a court of rabbis. I've always wanted this discussion on Sharia law. I don't really know what it is, and I don't know why there's a discussion on whether you're bound to it or you're bound to civil law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sharia, the development of Sharia is directly related to the very, again, historical and political circumstance. Because when, of course, Arab/Muslim armies, the reason I am using the word Arab/Muslim, because the first expansion happened after the Prophet Muhammad. It was mostly Arab expedition to different lands. When they expanded the first time, they now encounter with different ethnicities, different languages, and different people. Now, how are you going to govern those people? Like, you can certainly capture a land and people without knowing how to govern. You cannot really be successful. It cannot be sustainable. In order to govern people, you need law. That is first time it started. They started understanding of the Quran or approaching the Quran as a legal book. At the very beginning of Islam, there was no this legal understanding of religion or legal, because it was a kind of every day or every month, every year, revelation is coming to Prophet Muhammad. It is something new. They never think about these questions, like how to govern people, like legal issues. So during that time, there was mainly 4 schools of Islamic law developed, major schools in Sunni tradition. So there are 2 traditions in Islam, Sunni and Shiite. 80% is Sunni, 20%. These are very approximate numbers and current numbers. 20% Shia and 80% Sunni. Sunni law developed more than the Shia because the Sunnis were they created more powerful empires. Mughal Empire, Safavid Empire, after of course like the first Umayyad and Abbasid, so that their also development is closely connected to political, geographical expansion. The Sharia law is not just people, they think that it is just what is written in the Quran. When the expansion happened, there was also extra scriptural, a lot of inclusion in the law, in the Islamic law, like based on either ijtihad or ijma. These are extra scriptural sources of Islamic law, in addition to Quran and the Sunnah. So in those times, for example, they said that, like consensus of scholars is also the source of law. Which means that if consensus of scholars in Egypt, if they say that, female circumcision is considered to be within the Egypt, it can become the law as well. So it is very complicated and complex. It is not just the Quran, Islamic law, Sharia. It has a very long history. We can certainly have another mini series on Islamic law.
Maybe before we kind of have to conclude in 5 minutes, and I need to make some remarks as well. So if there's maybe one more question. Is there any more question from the audience? If not, I'll have you do your concluding remarks, and then I'll just take a couple of minutes to tie it up to other things, and to thank you, of course. So would you like to just wrap it up, concluding remarks, because we have to. Every good party has to end at a certain point.
I certainly respect all, like either theological, political perspective as well as the legal perspective. They have their own issues because you cannot govern people without law. I understand the legal perspective. I understand the theological perspective. But if you ask me what is sin from your perspective, I would respond what I think Prophet Muhammad responded, saying that sin is something that disturbs your heart and something that you don't really like people to know it. So if you want to have a measure, what is sin and what is good, like of course as opposed to, we always think about this opposites, what comforts your heart and what people maybe in an opposing way, I could use, Prophet Muhammad didn't say it, but I can say it, what people like to know it. Right? Like if they know that they will be proud of your action, then that is good. That would be my concluding remark.
And what a wonderful remark, because we're now just before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we need all the help that we can to make this time of year meaningful for us. And what more helpful it is than to open our intellect, our minds, our hearts to neighboring and sister religions and traditions and cultures, because one of the beliefs that we have is that the truth is out there, as it used to say in X-Files, if you saw the series. The truth is out there because God speaks in God's message is so powerful that no one person or one tradition can get it all, right? So it's always good to learn the complexities and the ways that other traditions have thought of things, because it helps us understand also ourselves and the world in which we live. And as I was listening to you, I saw so many similarities. Even when you say the word ummah, which means nation, it's the same in Hebrew, ummah. It's actually the same word, right? In Hebrew and Arabic it's like Italian and Spanish. It's very, very close languages. We forget that sometimes, but it's the same word. And even the United Nations is called It's the same in Hebrew, it's the same thing. So, and when you talk about the complexities of Islam, is it a theology, is it a law, is it a a foundation for our society, for a state? It's the same ideas that Judaism has been grappling with, because for many people here, for example, Judaism is a religion. But if you go to Israel, all of a sudden it becomes a nation that's trying to be Jewish, then has all sorts of challenges. In other words, these complexities we have, and also the ideas of what is actually the core of religion and what is cultural, and the fact that there's aggressiveness and peacefulness that exists in Christianity. Jesus taught love, but then look what Christian history, not always the most loving, because Jews have experienced that, Muslims have experienced that too, and in Judaism as well. There's parts of our tradition, that talks about universal love, and God is the message of love to all nations, and universal, camaraderie. And then there's other verses and parts of our history that are a little bit more, like Jews are better than others, or we should use force, etc., etc. So, like you said, it's not so much about who wrote it, it's about how we interpret it, which parts of our tradition we choose to adopt, which interpretation we give, and we understand everything is also in a cultural context, like you said. So everything you said, right, about Islam could have been mirrored Jewish tradition, I think, and probably vice versa. So what we see here is that we're not in two different conversations. We're in the same conversation that we're having in all those sister religions, and Islam, Judaism, Christianity really grew up and developed side by side. Jews have lived in Muslim countries for many, many years. And that is part of our family, which is why it's important to have guests like you come and visit us. I'm really grateful that you came. I would like to say that we will have more opportunity to learn from Dr. Mehmet Karabela. In the end, I'll get it right. Yes. Dr. Mehmet Karabela, here I got it right. Later during the year, in our Wednesday spirituality series, in the third mini-mester, I know it's hard to follow, in the third mini-mester, Dr. Karabela will be teaching more of the spiritual principles of Sufism in Islam. It'll be a half mini-mester. The other one will be about Hinduism. All right, so if you saw now how much there is to offer in that tradition, I encourage you to enroll in those classes, because then obviously we'll have a lot more time to go in depth into the different aspects of this more spiritual and maybe mystical Islam of the heart, like you were saying. Yes. So that is going to be a fascinating opportunity to learn more from you. And I'll just take the note to say that before that, those of you who come here appreciate studying together. Right after the high holidays, we have 2 more classes opening for adult education. One of them is going to be that same spirituality evening class. It's going to be, in fact, 3 more classes. So at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, we're going to have a series about the Song of Songs, which is a scroll of love in the Bible. Actually, my wife, Feline, some of you have seen her play, is going to be leading it. It's actually based on her research for a previous play that she did. She studied the Song of Songs in depth. So it's going to be a fascinating, exciting, I don't know what to say, much more superlative to give. So please enroll to that. There's a good group that's already enrolled, but I encourage you to enroll. That's going to be the first mini-master of Rosh Hashanah. And before that, at 6 p.m. is going to be intermediate Hebrew. Hebrew for beginners already began in September. If you already have background in Hebrew and you want to chat in Hebrew a little bit and improve it, enroll for that. You can come for 6 and then stay for 7. Fascinating track on Wednesday evening. Thursday morning, we're starting another track, which is going to be a whole journey. We start from 9:30 to 10:30 with mind-body experiences. Reading the program, they vary from time to time. There's going to be Feldenkrais and mindfulness, connect us to our bodies a little bit. Like you're showing us how in Islam, prayer is connected to the body. So we're going to be exploring that. And it's going to be followed by, I will be teaching a mini-master called Tale of the Talmud. tales, not the tale, but the fairy tales of the Talmud. So I don't know how many of you had the chance to study Talmud. I know that you gave a class, Liz, a little introductory. A lot of us here think that Judaism is only the Bible. It's not. There's many, like you said, there's Hadith, there's many, many books. One of them is the Talmud. And a way to get into the world of Talmud, if you don't know it, is the tales of the Talmud. The Talmud is not just halachic discourse, fascinating fairy tales. And we'll be studying it interactively. You'll be given questions, you go to small groups, you struggle with the text, you come back for discussion. It's going to be a fascinating way to get into this very rich world, followed by bring your own lunch at noon. So you also can schmooze with your friends and show off the nice lunch that you made at home and share it with your friends. So I really want to encourage all of you learners to take the opportunity of both the Wednesday and Thursday tracks, and really come to temple and learn. Next week's Hall of the Bagel is going to be in our mini series about sin and forgiveness from a psychological perspective by our very own Gail Ferrioli. And the week after is going to be sin and forgiveness from the perspective of the Latter Day Saint church, also known as the Mormons. So we really have a very amazing journey here together. Thank you again so much for coming. And I really feel like I personally learned a lot from you today, and I'm looking forward for more opportunities to bring you to our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, this is great.
It's very easy. I brought you, so you don't have to go far. So this is for you, and then from community, if they would like to come to the concert, they will have to scan and they will just, yeah, maybe you can take
The best thing is if you send me, it's better than this. I can digital. Yeah, and then we can put it in our newsletter. It's much better.
Okay, I will do that.
Because the digital one is going to we have weekly publications. And so we put first our events and then events in the community. Especially if it has like a Jewish point, you can, different we have. So you send me your, you send me.
This is Stanford Bank Center for Jewish Studies.
Yeah.
Yes, university.
So we will put it in our publication.
Yeah, because campus didn't deliver my Montreal, wonderful. Yeah, he's coming. So it will be a kind of special experience as well.
I will, what day of the week is it?
Thursday.
I will do my best to come myself with my wife. If I don't have unless I have like a board meeting or something, I will do it.
What we are gonna do, for your community specific, we'll spare first like 5-6 rows for our special guests, which means that like you will be specially invited. They don't even have to register, so when they even arrive at the place, they will this place will be
That's okay. So that's very kind. So I will try to include this in our newsletter the week or two before. Okay. Because I think our people will appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you for doing this. It's great. So we'll be in touch about all the technical things, right?
Okay, yes.
And when you want to be paid, you have to let me know how to do it.
Yeah, I think it can be, let's do that in this spring, like with everything. Okay, you don't have to do anything.
Okay, very good. So you let me know.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Let me show you. I have something to talk about. I want to show you quickly our sanctuary.
Want to see pictures?
I hope so. Yeah, right. Healthy life.
What time? Thank you.
Okay, don't come over there.
That is the reservation on Southwest. It's flight number 923.
smiling, laughing, and talking around me. And standing. On everything. And Sarah caught her. Sarah caught her, and she was reaching so Sarah said, the voice is not, Sarah says, refreshing. And everything. She eats whatever she does, like, I did that. She's just a doll. Just a doll. She went through a little country podcast now. All of a sudden, anybody touch her except it took the place when I went down there was a thing. Once she let me go, but she seems to be like that.
Wow. That's a whole other stress.
Bring your pajamas there.
I love seeing you walk out of these, you know.
Wear fancy pajamas.
There are different ways to express. It's a problem, you know, because they talk about love languages. When Mark and I were married, I got some. They already said. He was just ignoring me. That was what he wanted. He was giving me what he wanted, and I was giving him what I wanted. It was a bad match, you know. And I interpreted his total absence of help as not loving me. Oh, yes. Big deal, big deal. I wanted to take people. Oh. Yeah. Oh, so you just don't pick it through. Oh, wow. Wow, yeah. Yeah. What type of party? Just the first draft. Have an outfit.
Look, Frank Valente
I'll
came
never
twice.
do anything with a well, years ago, and I walked away from it. And when the police arrived, they
Yeah, you gotta watch this. Well, I was, gotta look it up. Right.
oh my God.
This is.
Come on, let's check out what those is. I got the whole kitchen. What? Oh gosh.
Yeah. What Grandpa built this place for. There's. Yeah, so we have a kitchen. There's a shower and a bathroom. My office. No, actually, that room was the office. This was ownership. Then, here's where all my tools are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice land.
Given the size of the car. So that was I love the way you are. Linguistic, but how does a math professor? Her name is so long that it's not. That's the problem. He might not.
And also maybe shut up only here.
So this is not running.
Jewish community. As long as
Do you want to start?
Yes.
Please up the mountains, in the 19th.
You're not giving
We helped, we had this thing now, this version is.
Also, give it a little more time. 2 hours.
There's a lot of room, there's too many.
Yes, okay, very good. So I'm going to now find out where the book is. That book green? Is the book green here or in conference A?
It's only 11 o'clock.
Yeah. But the question is, if they think that they're here, then where's the count? I think Level Green is going to come. So we have to know Level Green. Okay, let's go. And then we'll go to come to. That's what Jennifer said.
This is the whole. Oh, the fourth thing. Yeah. No, I'm just here in case our board is. Yeah, okay. I don't have a program, I'm just. Yeah.
Alright, we'll be here, Bagels, I have one question.
Not bagels. Well, you guys, at some point, we will have a program, but this one kind of just. You probably don't need me, right? Yeah. Well, I always like, yeah.
I'll feel well up. Feel well up. I told you I'm good at answers.
You're cool? So I really know.
What do you think about? I think you asked very much. Quality of thought. I started laughing if I saw you were there.
A lot of vitamin C. I think that's like. I'm gonna leave the meeting, right? Yeah.